Welcome. So in this video, I'm going to teach how to make a 7mm pen. This video is targeted towards the person who's never made a pen before and who needs to learn how to do the basics. Let me first start off saying I'm not a professional. I'm by no means an expert, but I have been doing pens for over 15 years and I've developed some pretty good technique and skill set when doing pens. I do advise you to learn how to use your own power tools, read the manuals, read the safety. And where I'm going to be doing something in the video that's not quite safe, I will tell you. And the reason why I'll be doing things that may not be safe is because of the fact I'm wearing a microphone and I'm trying to do something for the video. A great example is applying adhesive to the tubes and my finish. I use a particular type of finish and adhesive that gives off noxious fumes. Normally I'll wear a proper respirator with filter so I don't breathe those in. But you won't be able to hear me talk if I do that. So in this case, I'll apply them, I'll let you know, I'll stand back a bit while the fumes gas off. And if I do anything else I think might be dangerous, I'll let you know and I'll tell you probably the proper way to do it. But again, do your own research, learn your own tools, go look at other videos. For a 7mm kit, there's really not a whole lot of dangerous usage that'll be out there because I will be wearing a face shield when turning. I do take proper precautions when using any of the other tools, so hopefully this will go well. So let's get started. 7mm kit. You probably would recognize these as known as a standard slimline pen. Slimline pen is exactly that. It's generally straight all the way across from top to bottom. Everything is equally. I like doing these as my beginner pen and as my what I call a warm-up from when I haven't been turning in a long time because these things are cheap. Think of a professional sports player when they first take the field. They practice, they warm up. They don't immediately throw, the baseball player doesn't immediately throw the fastball. He throws lighter pitches, he lobs them in, and then eventually the pitcher starts going faster and faster, it's full speed. The same thing with turning. If you haven't done it in a while, or if you're just beginning, you want to practice before you go out and start on the $40 pen kit in that $30 pen blank, right? You don't want to ruin $70 in 2 seconds flat. So I buy, when they're on sale, I buy the 7mm pen kits, between $2 and $2.50 a kit, and I'll buy 20 or 30 of them. And when I want to get into the shop and I haven't been in a while, I'll run through 3 or 4 of them as a practice, as a warm-up. Like I said, they're cheap, they're great to practice on. Same thing when you're doing your wood. You can go out and spend $5 on these fancy acrylics and such when you're first starting. $1 blank at my local supply store. It's cheap. This is one particularly is sandalwood. I like sandalwood because it smells nice when you're turning. Think of an incense, right? Some of those nice incenses. It smells nice. Plus it's easy to turn. It's softer. With the fancy acrylics, you need to have really sharp tools. You need to have your technique down. If not, otherwise you're going to ruin these. And these can be ruined real easily. So let's start with the simple ones. So let's talk, what is a 7mm kit? 7mm kits have probably about 6 or 7 components in them. First thing you're going to have is 2 of these pen tubes. They're 7mm in diameter, the inner diameter. The 2 tubes are equal length. And by the way, with a lot of these kits, if you mess up on the tube, damage it, replacement tubes are available for sale. There is a clip. This clip is used to clip it to your pocket or your shirt. There's what we call transmission. The transmission is the twist mechanism for making the pen go in and out, the ink cartridge. There's a cap that holds the clip on. There's a center band which is what we see right here in the middle. And then there's this piece at the end. I have no idea what it's called. It's just the small piece at the end. So those are the main components you have. What you're also going to need is some sort of adhesive. I use what's called a CA glue, a tight bond in particular. CA stands for cyanoacrylate. It's basically a super glue. I have my sandalwood blank. I have my pen kit. I have a marker for just marking sizes of the tubes. I have a mandrel, which we'll use to place our pen blanks on for turning. A little barrel holder thing there, when you're inserting the pen tubes into the blank. That way you don't get your fingers all messy with the glue. I don't know how accurate that is. I'm always getting them messy with glue. Some sandpaper. I'll explain that in a minute. A pen mill kit, in this case a pen mill. Pen mills do two things. Is when you get the tube into the blank, more often than not, you're going to get some adhesive. The glue will be in the blank, down inside the tube as well. So a pen mill helps clean that glue out, and it also flattens your reference surface here. So when you put it on your mandrel and then your lathe, everything is nice and straight and true. I have a power drill. And then I have what's called a pen press for when we start assembly. The other thing I'll show you the packaging for, but it's already mounted. My drill press is a drill bit, a 7mm. In this case, this is a brad point. The brand is Colt. There's other good brands, Fitch. You really don't want to go cheap on the drill bit. The reason being is cheap bits bend. They may not be straight. And they could blow out the end, meaning as opposed to coming through cleanly when you drill them out, they could just blast a hole and you basically wasted everything. So let's get started. First thing I do is I take my pen tubes and I'll hold them against the blank. Actually, let's go this way so you can see it better. There we go. And what I'll do is I'll just make sure it's over just a little bit from the end. And maybe 1/8 of an inch on either side. I'll mark there. And then I'll do the same thing down here. So what I have are 2 marks, and I'll cut these pieces out for the blank. And there'll be about 1 inch maybe left over here. I like to leave them a little proud because sometimes even with a really good bit you still have a little blowout, and the blowout many times is just at the very edge there, so you can trim it off with either the bandsaw or the pen mill. So let's now move over to the bandsaw and then the drill press, and we'll finish prepping the blank. Alright, here we are at the bandsaw. Now I use a little sled. It's in line with the blade. It has a little channel cut out so I could see where, if I put my mark up against it, I know where the blade's going to cut. And it goes straight in. It's easier than freehanding it. It's much safer. So let's begin. Alright, so I cut the first one a little bit big just because the way I did the lines, I didn't do both sides equal. So let's move over to the drill press now. Okay, here we are at the drill press. Now there are many ways you can drill the holes in your blank. I use this little pen vise. You also use for ball stoppers. It has some detents indentations. So what you do is you spread this open. This comes in at the diagonal. You tighten it down. And the goal is to get this as roughly in the center of the blank. Make sure it's tight. Now I'm using, since this is a 7mm blank, these pen blanks I'm using, 7mm pen, are fairly big compared to the actual pen we're going to do. So you don't need fully centered, but you need pretty darn close. So we get this in. When I pull down, I'm going to go up and down, slowly working it in, clearing away the chips. You don't want to go in, you don't want to overheat your bit, which will dull it. You don't want to burn the blank, because depending on the type of wood, it may crack. So just take it slow, you're not in a rush. All right, here we go. And there's the first thing I should have checked. I did not check to make sure that my drill bit was centered. I thought I did earlier, but I guess I didn't. I had a different bit in here and I swapped it out for this one. I had a larger one, obviously still not centered, I can tell now. There we go. Make sure the bit is nice and tight. My bit may have slid down a bit. It's okay. Now let's give it a try. Much better. Getting close to the end now, going to punch through soon. That sandalwood smells really good. You can see, okay, now you notice how really off center I am. But this one was actually close. So two things are telling me. The first thing it's telling me is my table's not stable. And I can see how it's moving a bit, so I got to tighten that up. If this was a larger pen blank, I'd be upset. Not pen blank, a larger pen kit, because that wouldn't give me any material to turn. Let's get the last one in here. So as you saw, the blank slid down. What happens is many times these things are coated in wax to preserve them so they don't dry out. And if you don't have this nice and tight or a good grip, they'll slide down and get pressure. So, all right, these are cut. Let's go back to finish prepping them. All right, this is where we now get to make an actual mess and potentially get dirty. Now I'm going to use the CA glue to glue these tubes into the holes we just drilled. The CA glue, when it cures, gives off noxious fumes. They can be what they call sensitizing fumes for some people, meaning the more they're exposed, the more sensitive they get. It could burn your throat, burn your eyes. So in the normal, if I was doing this on my own without this video, I'd be wearing a proper respirator with the appropriate filters on to protect my breathing. And some cases I have a fan over here. I'll have a fan blowing the fumes out ways to protect my eyes as well. But for the video's sake, I can't do that. So just know that if you're going to use CA glue, just be careful of that. There are other glues you can use. You can use a polyurethane glue. You can use a standard wood glue. I don't know how standard wood glues work very well. I've only used CA glue and polyurethane. I've seen people have talked about using epoxies, whether it's a 5-minute epoxy or an overnight epoxy. So there's multiple adhesives you can use. The CA glue is just one of the faster ones to give you that, what's the word I want to look for? If you're impulsive and want to finish a project quick, you use something where the glue dries in 2 or 3 minutes versus something where the glue dries in 24 hours. Alrighty, so let's get started. So before you can glue a tube in, you got to realize these things are really, really smooth, and there's nothing for the glue to hold on to. So you take a piece of sandpaper. This is 100 grit, and all you're going to do is just scuff it up a bit. Get some nice scratch marks into the tubes. And this will enable the glue to have something to bite into. I'm going to grab a couple paper towels right now, just one to hold on to the pen parts that we're not going to be using at this moment. Move them out of the way so they don't get any adhesive on them. Also prevents me from losing them. Clear out some of these other things we don't need to use. All right. So I am using a thick adhesive. CA glue comes in multiple viscosities. There's thin, there's thick, there's medium. I use thin for repairing cracks. I use thick for gluing the tubes in, and I'll use medium as my finish. And when I show you finishing, I'll explain what I mean by that later. You take your glue, and it's going to take a bit. This is not a full bottle, so it's going to take a bit to work its way down to the nozzle. And you're going to put a nice fair amount across. You're not looking to be super wasteful. On the other hand, you're not looking to be a miser either. You need to make sure you get a good coverage. The tube doesn't have to be fully soaked in the glue because as you put it in the blank, it should move around a bit. You should have some. Let's get this in here. I'll grab just the very tip to hold. I'll move it in and out. I'll pick up some of the stuff that slides out and doesn't quite make it in. I can already smell it. Alrighty, and I'll just wipe up some of the other excess with the next tube. Wipe the excess off the tube onto this piece of Some of it got onto my little tool here, so I just want to wipe it off so I don't glue the tube to the tool. That would be bad. All right, let's get the next one going. Now, with these, some of these different brands, you know, not all super glues are alike, these CA glues. Some cure faster than others. Temperature can also play into it. Same with humidity. So the colder it is, the more time you have before it dries on you and cures. The more humid it is, the quicker you have to go. Super glue, crazy glues and such are can be moisture activated, so you gotta be careful of that. Okay, that's in there. I'm gonna grab another paper towel real quick, wipe my hands because I got some on there. Okay, let's wipe the tool. Now there are accelerants for these. I don't use the accelerants. I let them cure on their own. And unfortunately this has a little bubble on. Ooh. As we're waiting for it to cure, I'm just trying to make sure it all goes back down. There we go. I'm going to step away for a second because I could smell that curing. And it's like I said, it's not a nice smell. Alrighty. Let's see how we're going now. All right. So on this larger one, I've got a fair amount before I hit the pen tube. So rather than chase it with my pen mill, I'm going to go back over to the drill press and cut it off. So I will be back in a minute. All right, now that we're back, things have been cut. It's time to use the pen mill to finish squaring up the blank, cleaning all the excess glue. Many pen mills are really kits. They come with a basic set of trimmer that has carbide or some sort of high-speed steel cutting bits. And you insert various size bits that are designed really to fit the type of pen blank that pen that you're making. In this case, I'm using 7mm. So I put the proper insert in. Use a little Allen wrench here to tie it down. Alrighty. This gets chucked into a drill. Now I always put a glove on just because, you know, in case something slips or anything. And what you're basically doing now is you're going to put this in and you're just cleaning it out. So we've just cleaned out this particular side of the blank. Now I'll do the other side. There's no more excess glue. But now we need to make this nice and flush so it can go on the mandrel. So what we do is continue. And I'm just going to keep drilling until I hit the pen blank, the tube. Almost there. There we go. All right, that one's done. Getting close. There we go. Leave that over there for you. All right, this one can use a little bit more. What it is, I'm sneaking up onto the tube. There we go. Good. I believe that is there. This one go just a little bit more. All right. So what you have now, once this is done, you can see it's nice and rounded. You can now see the brass tube right here peeking out in the center of the circle there. And this is flush. So what's going to happen is this will now sit on our mandrel with against the bushings perfectly aligned. Well, perfectly as a person, for me, can get it. So let's talk mandrel. The mandrel is just what goes into your lathe, and it holds the tube. In this case, it is a long piece here where I'm going to put, I've got the part that goes into the headstock, some spacer bushings. I put in the first blank, I put in the spacer bushing, second blank, and then some more spacer bushings. And now we're set up and ready to go to the lathe for turning. So let me stop the video here, move over to the lathe and set up the camera. All right, so we now have the lathe set up. I have my tool rest set up so that my tool, the cutting edge, is parallel to the bushing, trying to keep it exactly in line. This video is not here to teach you completely how to turn. There has to be some practice on your end and some general familiarity with how to use lathe tools. So I'm not going to go into the proper... This is where I'm not an expert. And this is where a lot of people think they're experts and they're not. This is just how I learned and how I've progressed at it. There may be safer ways and such. So make sure you know how to use just a general basic turning, right? This is a spindle roughing gouge. We're going to use this, and we're going to use another spindle gouge. No bow gouges, just straight spindle gouges for this. And in general, we're going to try and go with these bushings tend to be where you want to cut down to when you turn. They're the general guideline. Now you can put some shape in here. You can put some, whatever you want. But keep in mind, as you get to the bushing side of it and the edges, you sort of want a nice gentle meeting. Because think about where your fingers hit on the pen, where you hit the center band or the bottom of the pen. You want that to be a nice smooth transition. So let's get started, and I'll just take away bulk of it with this spindle roughing gouge. If you find that it catches a lot, try tightening up your tailstock a bit. All right, so since my tool was catching quite a bit, two things are happening. One, it's probably not fully seated as much as it could have been in the headstock, and I kept on pushing it tighter and tighter. Two, this may not be perfect sharp as it needs to be. Sharp tools are your friend. Unsharp tools cause injuries, so make sure your tools are sharp. I'm going to use this a little bit more to get this down. I still got a little bit of ways to go. Let's move this in closer. So the downside of a larger lathe in pen making can be this tool rest is way bigger than I need it to be. I can't get it all the way up like on the small. This is like, I don't know what, a 6-inch, 8-inch tool rest, whereas on the smaller lathe, maybe a 4-inch or a 6-inch tool rest. So I'm going to probably buy another one of these, have the edges ground off so I can get nice and close. But let's just continue on. Alright, sorry if you got my back to the camera. What I did was I switched, instead of going from this direction, I turned and I started going this way. But to safely do that and control it, you have to hold it on your other side and just move in that direction. Right, instead of, right, normally you move your body, right? You're not moving the tool by itself. Your body should be moving with. So the only way would be for me to flip around. So I'm going to switch over to a mid-sized spindle gouge just for the moment, just to get some more done. Alrighty, here. Alright, and now I'm going to switch to my thinnest or smallest spindle gouge. to put those edges on here at where they meet the bushings. And then I'm going to sand the rest possibly down the sides. I may go through a little bit over with this here. We'll see how it goes. Alrighty, so I'm going to sand the rest down the size. I know a lot of people say, hey, only, if you're a good turner, you don't need to sand. You know what? That is correct. However, sandpaper's your friend. Get to where you want to be, you're comfortable at, and then, yes, you may spend more time, but sanding is not a bad thing. It's not a four-letter word. One of the things also to think of when you're doing a slimline pen, if you want to put shapes and such in there, is you got to put the clip on. So if you make the upper part too fat, you won't be able to get that clip, the kind that holds onto your pocket, on very well. It'll stick out, it'll stick up, you may have to bend it, do all sorts of stuff to it. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind function. A pen needs to be comfortable if you want people to use it. So as you practice doing shapes and such, imagine holding it in your hand itself. Some people like thick pens, some people like thin pens, some people like heavy pens, some people like light pens. So just keep that in mind as you're doing these. So now let's pause here. I'll get some sandpaper and we'll get started on that. All right, so what I've assembled is 100 grit sandpaper. I just cut them up into these little slices. You can buy rolls designed for wood turning, but I find this is more economical. So 100, 150, 220. We're doing wood. We do not need to sand up to 1,000. If we were doing a plastic, like an acrylic blank, I may take it up to 12,000 grit. But with this, and given we're doing the CA finish, 220, maybe something in the 300 range would be tops. So normally here I would wear a dust mask and have a vacuum attachment to get as much of the dust up as possible. But for the sake of this demo, we're going to skip that so you can hear me talk. The other thing I'm going to do is put a glove on because the sandpaper can get hot. And there's different theories on sanding. A lot of people will start it and go like maybe 200 RPM. I go higher. Part of that's the reason why I wear the glove, because the higher you go, the more friction you generate, the more heat you have. All right, let's get started. Now I'm not pressing hard, just enough that we bite into the sandpaper. The goal is to get rid of any major lines and get it to final size. I'm using this to bring the size down as opposed to just smoothing. Don't be afraid to use another piece of sandpaper. Just want to make sure where my fingers will touch any things here where the joints are smoothish. Okay, so before switching grits, people got to realize this is a spindle. This is like a block of wood that's long, right, like a leg of a table. That means the grain is going this direction. But all our sanding was in the opposite direction, it was diagonal. 90 degrees to the grain. So you can't tell on the camera, but there's all these little fine lines going this way. So let's take a moment and just go this way and get rid of all the major sanding lines. Alright, that looks pretty good. So the general rule of sanding for anything is your next grit should be no more than 50% greater. So this is 100. Hard to tell. So our next grit has to be 150. So let's go to 150 and go on to the next set of sanding. So once you get your initial sanding done with your starting grit, your next step up in grit level should go fairly quick. All you're doing now is smoothing. You're not shaping or anything. So now these should go quicker. You shouldn't spend a lot of time at each subsequent grit. Alright, just brush that off. I'm seeing some marks right here. Sometimes that can be where a knot was, changing grain direction. Doesn't look like it's tool mark or sanding mark because the wood is markedly different color. So I'm guessing it's just a change in the wood. And that's one thing about wood is it was a living imperfect thing, so you may end up as you get to there, you get like a change in wood grain or something. That's okay. It's wood. Love it for what it is. All right, we go on to the next and final sanding. So this is, by the way, this is 320 I'm at now. Sorry, 220. My mistake. Yeah, 220. 100, 150, 220. Alright, so now since I use a CA finish, I need to clean the wood really well. So what I use is naphtha. I put it on a paper towel, not a lot. It flashes off, it gets the dust off, it dries. And as it cleans the wood, you'll be able to see if there's any scratch lines that you need to sand. Okay, this is a pretty dusty wood. I'm going to do another towel of naphtha. All right, that's good for the moment. I'm going to stop here, let that dry, and prep for finishing. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, so as I mentioned, I use CA glue as a finish. Right, sticks to pretty much everything. So I'm going to put a little wax on the bushings where they meet to prevent them from getting glued to the pen. And I just use a little bit of this Mylan's wax. It's just like a, I don't know, so a little goes a long way. I've been using this for a few years now. And I'll just get it in between the joints there. Get some in there. It's okay, we're going to clean again using the naphtha and the tissue paper, the paper towel, just to clean off the wood. But this is trust me, if you've ever glued your pen blank that you spent a while working on to your bushings, it's not a fun thing. Get it in there. Alrighty. And then we tighten this back up. Lock it down. That's a good fair amount of wax. Clean them off a bit. Like I said, I'll get another towel in a second and we'll clean it all off. But just get that initial cleaning there. Oh, there goes that. Right, just cleaning the excess wax off. Alrighty, now let's finish some pens. So what I've got here is roughly a quarter sheet of paper towel. And I'm just going to fold it to like maybe fourths or so. There we go. And we just have it like that. I use a style of finishing taught to me off of YouTube by a gentleman named Russ Fairfield. So you can probably still find his videos on YouTube. Just making sure this thing is dry. Not quite. I'll let it flash off. And his method is you take some boiled linseed oil. I just have it in a little easier bottle to hold it with. A couple drops on the paper towel, a couple drops of the CA glue, and then furiously go back and forth. I'm going to show you one, and then I'll show you the final steps after I do a bunch more, because you do 5 or 6 of these, it takes about a minute per coat, and then you need safely another minute or 2 between coats to fully cure. That's basically 10 to 15 minutes of you watching dead air. So I'm going to do one, stop the camera, and come back for the final cleaning and any polishing or anything else I need to do. So let's just do the first coat. Looks like it's dry now. Good. So grab my glue. All right. I've got a clogged dispenser here. Give me a second to unclog. That happens. Boiled linseed oil does dry, and it dries to like a rubber when it's thick. Alrighty, dispenser unclogged. So I thought, it's going to take a little bit more. Let me pause the camera. Alright, so I've put some of the boiled linseed oil onto the tissue, paper towel. I'll now take some of the CA glue, just a few drops. And then I just go back and forth, slowly at first. I put my lathe on slow, I turn it on, and I slowly get it going. You go back and forth. By doing this, it's not only helping it cure, you're burnishing it and sanding at the same time. Normally this is about a minute per coat. I usually wear a respirator. Alright, and then what you do is you just fold the tissue over and repeat the process on the clean piece. Now, I'm going to stop the camera because again, you get a minute or 2 between coats, another minute of doing a coat, so it's just going to be boring as you watch. So we'll come back for the final polishing and then assembly. Alright, so welcome back. I forgot to record the last step I was doing on the lathe, which was applying a polish just to make it a little bit more, helps smooth it out and creates a nice little sheen. With the CA glue, I use this Meguiar's Plastic X. I get it at the local auto parts store. It's good on the CA glue finish. It's good on acrylics. I would not use it on raw wood. I would also not use it on a friction polish finish, which is really just a combination of wax and shellac. So again, for a CA finish, this is a good step. And now what we're going to do is assemble the pen. Now, each pen kit you buy, there's instructions you can download. Sometimes they're in the package. And they talk about what goes where and how it goes things. Which is great. Some of these things though are tight fits and you're squeezing, so you really have to use some sort of vise or a clamp. I prefer one of these. It's an inexpensive, it's called a pen press, and it's just a sliding piece that moves in and out to whatever distance I need. And then this is just a little ram that pushes it down. You can use a wooden hand screw clamp. You can use parallel clamps, whatever. I find this just is easy for me. So what we're going to do is begin assembly of our pen here. I'm going to take it off the mandrel. Now, people go, well, which way's up, which way's down, and all that good stuff. Good questions to ask. This is a 7mm pen kit, if you remember. The beauty of a 7mm is the two sides are the same height. And when you turn them to the diameter of the bushing, right? We talked about these bushings that were on the mandrel. Let me just zoom in on them so you can see what the bushing looks like. And if you turn to the thickness, this outer diameter of the bushing on both ends, all the way around, you end up with basically two equal, in every respect, parts. So either way can go up or down. Now where that changes is if you decide to add a profile or make one side slightly bigger for your hand and such. A good example would be, would be this pen here. You could see how this is much bigger. And this is just a shaping you can do, right? Design. So that to me, because I put this near the bottom for my hand, I know that this is the bottom. So that's where I want to put this end piece here. My next video we'll get into the philosophy and things to consider when shaping a pen. We'll talk about grain, we'll talk about patterns, we'll talk about form-fitting function and how things you want to look. So that'll be the next one. So let's just get started on finishing our 7mm. So with the 7mm, I just do the outer parts first. We take the little end piece there. Let me just back this up so it's closer to the ram. And you're not going to slam it in, right? Go fairly slow. There we go. That's that piece there. We take the clip and the end cap. Two separate pieces here. And the end cap. And the end cap goes through the hole in the clip. You can see that hole there. I'm just going to put it through. So it's like that. And I'll put these two pieces, oh, that falls off, that's okay. As long as it doesn't roll onto the floor, we're good. And we'll push that in. So there's only two major pieces left. We have the transmission, and the transmission is really, it's a twist pen. So this brass piece here, this end, is really is a twist mechanism to extend the ink cartridge out. Let's see if you can see the twist in operation here. There we go. That's a good view. You can see that going forward and back there. Now, when I insert this into the tube, I like to make sure this is extended like that. Just a little bit of extra strength. The other thing you got to be careful of is sometimes when you're doing your pen, you may have trimmed the barrel down slightly so it's not fully length. So you don't just want to shove the twist mechanism in. You want to carefully insert it and do some tests, right? The reason I say that is if you put the twist mechanism too far, think of a pen, right? The pen's coming out, Sorry for what this looks like. This is the ink cartridge extending from the pen. And if you go too far with inserting the twist mechanism, when you pull the untwist, right, to retract the cartridge, it won't retract all the way, right? Because you've pushed the transmission in too far. So what I find is I sneak up on the desired depth. So what I'll do is, let me just move this down a bit. Make sure we got some space here. Nope, not enough space. There we go. Line that up. Hold it. And I'll get it in almost to where there's a little line on the transmission itself. And I'll remove the pen. And I will insert the ink cartridge so it's seated fully to make sure it's in all the way. And then I will do practice in and out, twisting it to see how far the ink cartridge goes in or out. And right now it's not even protruding at all, so I know I got a little bit to go there. Again, you want to sneak up on it. There are disassembly kits if you make a mistake, you want to go through the effort of disassembling your pen. I just find if I spend a little bit more time up front, it works good that way. Looking, it's almost about to peek through when I look down, so I know I'm getting there. All right, you can see now the cartridge is just peeking through the tip there. Barely coming through. Barely, so I could do a little bit more. This is where I get a little nervous because this is where it's easy to go way too far at this point. I'm really only looking for maybe another millimeter in. And that's where you want something that lets you control the depth a little easier. And I've seen pen presses where there's a knob you turn, like a screw, to manage the ram. And I think that's actually a better type of device because that lets you fine tune it more. At a more granular level. This ram, you sort of get, it sticks and then all of a sudden it just goes. Okay, that's not much of a, I want a little bit more. This barely, it's sticking out, but not as much as I prefer. And this is all preference. I like to have a decent amount sticking out. There we go. So now, it retracts all the way. I'm looking down the tube just to see the pen there, barrel, just to see how much it retracted, how far up it's in, just to know if I want to make adjustments, how much more I've got to play with. You'll notice, let's see if I can zoom in here more. Oh, I can, great. That I am past the point of the tip, and it's where the ink cartridge starts going past the taper of the ink head itself. I'm going to do this here. Okay, so you can see the very tip here has a taper on it to where the head is, to where the ink comes out. And I like to have this straight piece here showing just a little bit out of the pen. This is a preference, so don't feel that you have to do it the same way. And that looks nice to me. So the next step we do is just add the center band and then join the two pieces together, and we have a pen. Center band just slips over, right? It just like, and then you just slide the two on. And there we have it, a 7mm pen. Now a little thing about the 7mm pen kit. The ink cartridges that come with many of these, especially the cheaper kits, are not very good. I found replacement cartridges are not always consistently sized the same what come to kits. So if you plan on replacing the ink cartridges as a matter of default, because you're going to give these things a gift, get the replacement cartridges now, and when you're inserting the transmission, going back and forth, use the replacement ink cartridge. So that way you get the proper seating that you need. I've seen them where there's like an extra thread or two, or missing an extra thread or two. I've seen it both ways, in which case if it's missing a thread or two on the ink cartridge, the cartridge will stick out even further as opposed to the nice seating that we had originally. What I mean by that is if we do my little picture here, when they're missing a thread, they seat deeper. If they have too many threads, which is okay, because then you can always insert the transmission more. But when they're too deep, the only way is to use a disassembly tool and to back out the transmission, which is not fun because you're taking apart multiple components of the pen to get there. So just be careful of that piece of knowledge there. And there we go. We have our 7mm pen. Thank you very much for watching.